your life is on the line and you know that you're on an oxygen tank and they're going to put two in your head, see what you do. Because the bottom line is that me, I'm one person. I can never miss.
The guy's not being loyal to you. How could you be loyal to him?
Yeah.
And whether you're your father or not. So, but it's always been hard because it was my father.
The word came down, this guy had to go. We didn't know nothing about him until the last minute. And I liked him. I liked Bill. He was a nice guy, but...
Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Scott Burnstein.
File a tax return admitting that they make a living illegally gambling. So
that's
I was
crazy.
Fascinated as a 14 and 15, 16-year-old, being kind of fascinated by that. And whenever those guys would be around, I'd sit and just talk to them about gambling and betting and handicapping.
Yeah.
But sorry, this is a long answer to your question.
It's all right, man.
But none of it was really of interest to me outside of those little interactions. So like we'd be at a dinner table and I'd hear a story about the Purple Gang and I'd laugh or I'd be interested for those 5 minutes that we were talking about it. But it didn't resonate past that as like something I wanted to research more or look into more. Or my grandpa's friends, like there'd be a anecdote of one of them doing something crazy because they were a crazy bunch of guys. Or I'd go back to, I'd go to high school and I'd been with them on a Saturday and I'd, go tell my friends on a Monday, oh, you couldn't believe what my grandpa's friend Bernie did. And I would kind of tell the story as if like these guys are kind of on the fringes of the mob. But again, it didn't mean much to me time. So the answer to your question is when I was 23, 24 years old, I went to law school. And in my second year of law school, I was 24. I was my first end of my first year, 23 turning 24. I got a job working at the Illinois Attorney General's office in criminal prosecutions. It was an externship, which is kind of like an internship, but it goes throughout the year instead of just a set period of time. So
basically like shadowing the
so shadowing a unit. It was like a subunit of the prosecutor's office. And
did you see any crazy cases while you were there?
Yeah, so I started. You're kind of split. You spend some of your time with one unit, and then another. They give you kind of two sectors of the law to learn, and I had two kind of very different subunits of the Attorney General's office that I was assigned to. So my first handful of months, I was doing environmental law. So they were prosecuting guys that were dumping
like oil and things like that.
No, it was most of the work I was doing was like construction companies that would be illegally dumping their waste at certain black market black market landfills, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like toxic waste. The dirt is contaminated, like what they tried to do at the big day.
Right, and they don't want to pay. They don't want to pay. They don't want to pay to dispose it of the proper way because it's very costly. So they illegally dispose of it, or just some case they just dump it. They just leave it in the woods somewhere.
I see it all the time, man. When I go for walks in the woods, you see piles of garbage everywhere. It's messed up.
Then eventually I got moved to a. So it was the Attorney General's office within the criminal prosecution division. And then my first kind of cycle through was with this environmental law team. And then I transitioned into organized crime. And I just, from day one, I was hooked.
Right when you started.
Right from the second I stepped foot into a meeting room and they laid out on the board in front of us, like it was like something from like, an FBI interrogation room with all these pictures and like like shoe ties that were like connecting all the pictures in like a pyramid shape, and I started helping them work Chicago Mafia cases, and I mean I was the lowest man on the totem pole. I was going to get them coffee, but
what year was this?
So this was 2001, 2 ish.
That was in Chicago.
In Chicago, yeah, 2001, 2002, 2003. And I actually worked a couple mob murder cases. When I say I worked, again, I was present when the case was being worked by the Illinois Attorney General's. But getting to go out with the Cook County Sheriff's Department, which had a wing of their sheriff's department that was connected to the AG's office, and they would do all the investigative stuff. And I was assigned to these two, like just out of central casting, two Chicago, old school Chicago cops. Probably both guys in their 50s at the time, and one was Greek and one was Polish and one was Italian, and they were like not like Barney Miller on steroids.
Yeah,
and just going around, getting to do what they call door stops, where we went into areas around a couple mob murders. One that had taken place in '99. Ronnie Jarrett, who was killed in Bensonville, and then the Tony the Hatchet Chiramonte hit from '01. Which was out in Lyons Township. I went with them in the neighborhoods of where the hits occurred, and just did. I would just go with them, and they would knock on everyone's door and be like, "Did you see anything? Can you tell us anything?" I mean, again, basic stuff. We weren't, I wasn't.
Were they both shootings? The murders? Both
yeah,
shootings?
They were both. Tony the Hatchet was killed in a. There's a fried chicken chain in Illinois called Brown's Chicken. That's a popular local fried chicken chain. And he was killed by a hit team. He was supposed to meet someone in the parking lot. He pulled his BMW in the parking lot. Hit team kind of came out, started shooting at him. He ran into the Brown's Chicken, and they got him in the vestibule before he reached the safety. I guess thought the safety of the restaurant. And then Ronnie Jarrett was killed on his way to ironically on his way to a funeral, getting into his car right outside his house. Someone came in a truck and drove by and unloaded a clip into him.
Yeah, so there was a lot of organized crime.
Well, that was really the last. Those were two of the last 3 or 4 mob hits Chicago's seen. Chicago was a very gangland slaying friendly environment there for a long time, and it looked like that was going to continue into the 2000s with the Jarrett hit, which happened at the very end of '99, and then he died in 2000 after being in the hospital for a couple weeks. The Chiramonte hit was in '01. And then there was a disappearance of the underboss, Tony Zizzo, who disappeared in '06. And then
never found him.
They've never found him. But he was caught up in the same power play as Chiramonte was 4 years before that, or 5 years before that.
So it has something to do with internal.
Yeah, it was a divergence within the ranks of the Chicago Mafia. Was specifically a divergence within one crew. The Cicero crew had been running things, and one Cicero regime was coming out of prison, while another Cicero regime was going into prison, and the changeover of power was volatile. And you had members of both sides that ended up dead. And then there was a murder from, I believe, 9 or 10 of a Hispanic enforcer in the north side of Chicago, in Wrigleyville. North side of Chicago was controlled by the West Side crew, or the Grand Avenue crew. and this guy's murder has been tied to that group. So there's been 4 murders in the 2000s, or 3 murders in the 2000s, but one guy that died in 2000 after being shot in '99.
So they're still operating, right?
Yeah, in Chicago. Yeah, I mean, Chicago and Detroit are still operating, as is New England and Philadelphia. Those are the 4 crime families that I report on. Yeah, so getting back to, I was working those cases in Chicago, and becoming kind of obsessed with learning the history of the mafia, and learning the history of my hometown, Detroit. I immediately wanted to start learning about all the stuff that I'd heard about from my family in Detroit, as well as just learn about stuff I didn't know at the time. And
is there like a lot more than one family in Detroit, or is it like a whole bunch of different families?
No, Detroit. Well, Detroit's got, in terms of the Italian mafia, there's one family. The Tocco's a really crime family. There's also a Middle Eastern crime family known as the Chaldean Mafia.
I think a lot of people out there, I don't think they understand that there's the mafia is like, it could be a whole bunch of different groups. It could be the Chinese mafia. It could be
organized crime doesn't really
discriminate
itself to any ethnicity. I mean, there's organized crime in every ethnic group, and a lot of times those ethnic groups work together. Other times they don't. In Detroit, we have a Chaldean is an Iraqi Christian. For people that aren't from this area in Detroit, not a lot of people know what a Chaldean is. It just means someone from Iraq that is not a Muslim. So they're Catholic Iraqis. They have their own organized crime group.
Really?
That's
the first time I've ever heard that one.
Yeah, and they're very, very rich and powerful and ruthless. Have worked at various times in tandem with the Italian mafia and in opposition to the Italian mafia. There was a black mafia, doesn't really exist anymore, but the black mafia was a subset of the Italian mafia, where the Giacalone crew had financed and backed a number of black racketeers. And then there is some semblance of Russian and Albanian organized crime, but I don't know how structured they are. But I do know that they exist, and they're vicious individuals, their reputation at least, and they're known to do muscle work.
I mean, there's Polish, and German.
Yeah, but the Polish and German don't have an organization. If you're Polish or German, you're working with the Italian. So from that point on, I had a professor in law school that encouraged me to write about the law, because I didn't want to practice law. I wanted to kind of chronicle it and be a storyteller. Even though I was in the middle of law school, and I had a professor who happened to be a published author, and he put me in touch with a publisher, and I got a book deal when I was 27 or so, and my first book came out when I was 29.
Yeah, that's a big accomplishment, man.
Or 28, maybe 28, 29.
Especially back then when you didn't have the internet and all that.
The internet was still the internet was still.
I mean, in its infancy, you don't have as much information as you do now. But I want to write a book, man. I'm working on it. I've been scribbling away. I mean, you can write a book about pretty much anything. Yeah.
It's a lot of time, a lot of energy. Like I said, I've written 6. 4 are traditional, 2 are ebooks. I might be starting on another one soon, but it's you definitely got to love it, because for the most part, I would say 99.9% of the time, you ain't doing it for the money. Because the money really isn't there. I mean, like I said, I got 4 books. You can go into any Barnes and Noble in the country and go get one of my books that's on the shelves at any of those Barnes and Nobles. But ask me how much those monies, how much those books, how much money those books have put in my pocket. It's at the end of the day, it's like slinging burgers at McDonald's.
I mean, you
People
gotta
don't
have a
know that,
love.
though, dude. Bill, people don't know that. Everyone thinks that
No,
I've made millions of dollars off of writing about, organized crime, and I'm just like,
I mean, people
$10.
are interested. People are interested in that genre.
No, it's not that they're not. No, I'm not. I'm not.
I
I'm
mean,
not trying to bash their interest.
have you
I'm
got a
saying
lot of book
when I get,
sales?
I'm saying when I get criminals that feel like I've made all this money off them,
Yeah.
or that say to me, "Oh, you've made $1 million off of writing about me." I'm like, all due respect, don't flatter yourself.
Yeah.
Unless you're John Gotti or Whitey Bulger
Yeah.
or Al Capone, there's really not a ton of money or even market there to tell the stories that I want to tell. So I tell them because I think they're stories that need to be heard, and they're great parts of history, and they're fascinating tales to spin. But this narrative out there in some circles of the underworld, when people view me, whether it be guys from Philadelphia or New England or Chicago or Detroit,
Yeah.
I just know a lot of them think I'm making a lot of money, and I'm not at all.